Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another deck profile for the first set of Battle Spirit Saga. Now again, to be fair, this is very early in testing, but this quite honestly might be my deck for Vegas. I have loved, obviously I want to play a yellow deck in Vegas, so that kind of narrows it down, but I've played quite a few decks, and I just really love the way this one plays, and the amount of outplays that it has within it, and the sequencing that you can do makes it a very rewarding deck to play. So this is not the thing I want to say up front is there's two very different style of decks that you can build with Godbeast. And today we're going to be talking about more of a value or more mid-range style of deck. And then there's also the variant that could just be, well, I'm going to jam a bunch of vanilla 2-drops as well and just try to go wide and swing out on my opponent on like turn 2, right? So again, that strategy might not work against a lot of red heavy meta that might all be playing Arc and that would have you, but against some purple and white decks that could just get there in some cases, right? You're not giving your opponent a lot of time to set up or find their key pieces, and even after sideboarding, where they might bring in more sideboard hate, they still have to draw into it. Now, yes, the way the mulligan works, it does heavily favor you to start finding some of your sideboard pieces, but, you know, game 2, game 3, you're bringing in your own sideboard pieces as well. So I'm very curious to see which side of this that I end up on. I am playing more of like the mid-range value side of it. There's a lot of cards I really love in here that fit very well. There's also some flex options that we're going to talk about. And then the only thing I will comment here is that, yes, I'm only playing 2 Absolute Ice Shield. And this is going to be a lava hot take, but I think 0 might be correct. 0 is definitely correct if you're playing the all-out, 2-cost, low to the ground, go as wide as possible, as fast as possible. Yes, you're playing 0 Absolute Ice Shields. But in this list, it's something that I've only ever wanted once, and you have quite a bit of draw power that you're churning through your deck and able to see it. Also, to be noted, it is a 4-drop, so it does go against some of the synergy that your deck wants to have. So I feel like 2 is the right spot, but you quite literally only want to see this once over the course of the entire game, and everything else is about building up your board and getting more value out of your Blessed Cathedral. Now, that said, of course, if you're going to be playing against the go wide version of this deck, you're going to be bringing in things like Absolute Ice Shield and Exhaust Nexus, and that's where your sideboard comes into play. But overall, this is meant to be the slightly slower and more value style of the Godbeast Behemoth with some tech options I've thrown in, and this is just because I've played tested against a lot of red so far and expect a lot of red in Vegas as well. So that said, again, unless I can find a better Luster deck, and I haven't found one that I totally love yet, this is most likely what I'm playing in Vegas. I think this is just a ton of fun to play. So let's get into it with each individual card, and starting things off with Godbeast Behemoth. So this is your 8-drop with 6 reduction. That does get cheaper because it plays into your strategy, right? So we've mentioned that a lot of this deck is going to be churning through your own units, vomiting stuff to the graveyard, and drawing more cards. So naturally, Godbeast is going to be a 2-drop. 2-drop in the sense that he costs 2. Obviously, you're not printed. You can't just flip this guy off the top and draw it off like Prince Penton, for example. But it's very, very easy to play this unit. And what I really like is the power thresholds going up to 11k for only 3 cores is very, very strong in a yellow deck. It does help you get around things like Nova's wide deletion, that you can still have a unit and then just change some other units on your next turn back and make them all unblockable. But really what this card's great at is the second effect is when the spirit attacks, your spirits that cost 2 cannot be blocked by your opponent's spirits that are level 2 or higher during this turn. In a lot of scenarios, right, you are playing a yellow deck, so your units are going to be weaker, and your opponent is just going to be stacking up cores on their spirits to make them bigger, make sure that they can block for free and all that stuff. And this card actively punishes them for doing so. And it is a surprise factor because, again, everything has haste, there's no summoning sickness, what have you. So you're able to very cheaply put this guy in the field. Again, it's going to cost you 2. Just the way the deck works, it only costs 2. Don't be, scared off by the printed cost. Put it into play, throw 3 cores on it. You don't care. Swing sideways with a big 11k body. He's taken something out, or there's guaranteed to take the life. And then they have all these other units they can't block with. So this has been quite the surprise. And also, it's 11k, so it's hard to remove, right? If you attack and they Absolute Ice Shield and go, okay, well, you stop my attack this turn. No, they still have to do something about it. This guy is very, very tanky and is very hard to remove, even if, let's say even if you screw up and don't attack with this guy first, for whatever reason, right? 11k, even if they have Confront, they got to do a lot of work to still remove this guy because you're also going to have yellow magic. So it is overall just a very strong card. It does what you want it to do in this kind of value and go wide strategy. So again, it's both good in the go wide side of things, because you do want just a top end creature that's going to be able to, or spirit that's going to be able to get through the board. And then you also want to have it for your value decks and say, okay, I only need 2 or 3 spirits on board to win, but I want to make them unblockable. And this guy does it very, very well also. And again, all around very solid card, does everything you want to do. Now, the card that does not fit so well into the all-in go wide strategy, but is beyond even better than I ever could imagine. And I will be honest, like, my first list had this at 2. I've recently added this to 3 because the card is just that good. It probably should still be 2, and I'm being greedy, but damn it, it's Alice. I'm going to be greedy. The card just does... First off, the card art is gorgeous. Like, the framing and everything is great, but the card slaps. So this is now where you really start to divide the deck archetypes and say, okay, well, I am either going to have some magic that's going to help me shrink some things some more, or Alice just straight up kills stuff herself, right? It's not uncommon that you're going to have 3 other spirits, 2 to 3 other spirits on board, right? Because you want to get her secondary effect. You're going to be able to swing with her and then delete something that's, 3 to 4,000. Heaven forbid you play yellow magic that also reduces stuff, right? So this allows you to kill quite a few things. And then not only that, the level 3 effect, which, yes, they can break up your board, so there is ways around it. But at some point, this just becomes an immortal blocker for you and your ramping cores if you need it to be. So the flexibility that this card offers within this style of deck, and also the fact that you're able to vomit out multiple spirits very easily and recoup your hand because of the whole 2-cost, aggressive side synergy, Alice really is just going to be one of your main threats. Now, again, it's only a 7,000 power. Yes, it can only shrink, on average by 3,000. But that's enough, right? That means you're looking at a 10K across the board. And then if you have other magic, you can go even taller than that. Or, again, because we're going to be talking about Blessed Cathedral and stuff, sometimes you are just going to be able to put out a board where it's like, hey, I've gained all these cores over the game. I'm now able to put 7 spirits on the board, and oops, Alice is just going to delete something of yours, right? It is expensive the turn you play it, that it costs 6 with only 3 reduction, and you want to have 3 cores on it. That can be very, very expensive in the early to mid game for this yellow style of deck, because you also then have to have other spirits on the board, but the effect is crazy strong. If I don't play this in the Godbeast deck, and if I find a Luster deck I like, spoiler, I'm going to try to make her work in Luster as well, because this card is just that good in what it wants to be doing. Now, again, to be fair, if the meta does slow down, we start to see a lot of like very go tall white, or very tall go tall purple with like the whatever the 8 drop is. I'm blanking on the name now. It makes you discard 5, right? Like go tall white or go tall purple can be very, very difficult for this card then, because you're not getting the value out of the first effect, and then maybe you have to tackle on like exhaust, Nexus, or some other key combo magic pieces to really get the value out of it. So that's where you have to decide where in a normal kind of what I would say open meta, I think Alice does a lot of work. However, that said, in a go tall style of meta where you only have 1 or 2 really high BP units, Alice really doesn't get the value then, but then hopefully your Godbeast, right, kind of clears out those threats for you, and or just lets your guys be unblockable. And that's kind of the give and take within the system. So Alice, I think right now going into Vegas, is going to be a very high valued spirit, but depending on how the meta shakes out, it is something that could kind of go out in favor, where you're just trying to get more of the, maybe you have a couple more magic spells that you put in, try to get more value out of your Luster, or maybe you bring in the Exhausted Angel. I forget what's the 4-cost 2-drop when you use a magic, tap something down, right? Like that becomes very good then, where Alice kind of comes out of favor. So at least for right now, definitely every yellow list I'm playing is going to have 2 to 3 of these, and I think the card is just absolutely gas. That's a very, very strong card. Now moving into like more of the value side of things and talking more about what makes this deck work, right? So up first we have Blessed Cathedral, and it's really important to note here is that this is during either attack step. So this card just does it all for us. Yes, it is a 4-drop, so you just play it turn 1, forget about it. And it only has 1 reduction, but multiple of these are also going to be great because your opponent's going to be playing red anyway. So literally always play for Blessed Cathedral. Do not let me catch you playing less than 4 Blessed Cathedral in this list. So during either attack step, place a cord from the void into your reserve when one of your yellow spirits is destroyed. So really important here too, like this is really important for understanding that there's going to be board states where you just have like go wide blockers. You're building up all these cores, and now you're suddenly ramping, where now you can play these very expensive magics that you might not have been able to because your opponent is actively swinging at you, where if they're trying to leave those smaller attackers for the last one, you're going to play like Exhaust, Nexus, or even Angelic Pressure is fine, right? You can now play these cards and just kill out their last couple attackers and then crack back for a win. And then on top of that, we're already getting all these cores, right? During either attack step, and this is for 3. Now, don't get me wrong, it is expensive. Draw a card when one of your yellow spirits is destroyed. Now, it's important to note this is not 2 costs like you'll see with Soap Bubble, Lakeside, or some of the other cards that care about 2 and or 3 costs. This is just straight draw. And there are times where it's just like, okay, you've ramped me all these extra cores, and now I'm just having this board where it says, okay, go ahead, attack me, confront me. I don't care. I'm now going to get a core and I am now going to get a core and draw a card, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, this is here to stay, and you have to deal with it at some point, or I'm just going to keep getting value. Like, there is a game where I legitimately ran out of cores, and I almost decked myself with Blessed Cathedral. So there is a point where you just create a bit of a soft lock for your opponent, where you are now able to craft the perfect hand. Or again, you just get Godbeast, right? You have 7 spirits on board. Maybe you just find the Owls or you find the Godbeast, and the dude's just chucking it away at 11k, right? Your opponent is losing spirits or they're losing life when you have a Godbeast on the board, and that's fine. And then the other side of this is Soap Bubble Lakeside. I like this as a 2 of. It's just I want something else that can give us that value, give us that recursion. This one cares about 2 or 3 costs. So again, this is where we still want to build in heavily into the 2 cost theme, that if a 2 cost dies, we want a 2 cost to be on top of our deck. You know, that's still the way that we can get these spirits back. And when a lot of them either recycle themselves or help us find other threats, something like Lakeside, while it might not be the most like, hey, this is a, value style of Nexus, it's more of just a, go ham, go wide, doesn't always have that expectation of it, right? Where you're just using this purely for value. But this card is gas. It does give you that value. And then also what's really nice is the level 2 effect, not going to come up all that often, but game 1 against your white opponent, if they're playing a heavy winds block, then you just have this on the board anyways, and it's just free value. So you're going to beat up on the white decks most of the time anyways. It's just nice to be able to have such a main deckable card that gives you a little bit more hate when you want it against the robot army. Now going into some of the spirit selections itself, we have our value spirits, right? So Freezetol, this is obviously a staple, always playing for. It's your draw engine for the deck, that your on-board draw engine that when one of your spirits dies is destroyed in battle. So this is a very important disclaimer here. It does say that it has to be in battle, which means it is either attacking or it, for the sake of battle, the terminology, right? It's blocking, but this one says during your attack steps. So if your opponent has like an AoE or something, like you don't get to draw those cards. But that said, Freezetol wants to be aggressive. It helps your other spirits start swinging, and it says, look, you got to take a life or I'm drawing a card. And again, in a deck that has such a high recursion value and draw value, you don't care about your stuff dying. You're just trying to cycle through your deck. You're trying to find your Alice. You're trying to find your Godbeast, and Freezetol does that quite well. Prince Penton is our 2-drop. Reveal top card of your deck. If it's a 2 cost, add to your hand. If not, discard it. Just a great unit. What's important about this, though, too, and also with the other Penton, is realizing what the power thresholds are, right? So with Leon, which is a card in red, it is able to blow up the cost 2,000 or less. Having spirits that can go to either 3,000 or 4,000 power fairly easily and stick those on the board is very, very important for yellow to have. And Penton and Penton both do a very wonderful job at that at 3 cores and 2 cores for the 3K on the other one. So just from like an overall, stickiness, I'll say, on the board, these guys do a wonderful job of that. And then also Penton, this is one that I think is going to catch a lot of people off guard until they start playing with it more. If you're just in the go wide strategy, it's probably not as important, but at level 2 and 3, reduce the cost of the first magic card you use each turn by 1. Now you're just getting free spells. And as we're talking about the Luster package, right, there's a way to get extra value out of your cards and create these really interesting lines where you can go like angelic, or sometimes just double angelic pressure, right? Minus 6,000 to a unit. That's fine, and you're able to do that easily because of Penton, because you have to remember, in yellow, you're going to be so resource or core starved compared to other colors because you want to have this go wide board. And again, Luster can get away with it where you might only have a couple, and it's in that more go tall strategy. But overall, you do want to have multiple spirits on the board to go, again, with Freezetol, or because you just want to have multiple attacks. And Penton giving you that free resource does matter quite a bit. And it's been very, very, very strong in my testing. And again, the fact that it is a 3K for only 2 cores, I cannot stress that enough. That is a wonderful number to hit compared to the other spirits in this deck. And then the one that I know gets a lot of, it's going to get a lot of questions or people are just skipping over them, is what I'm just going to call like the Luster package, but otherwise just good yellow cards. So Caladrius, I love this card. I truly cannot stress enough how amazing this card has been in this deck for me. It's a 2 cost, so already checks that box. It goes up to 3,000 power, checks that box as well, and it has luster. So we are now able to, if our opponent is playing like an arc, right? We can now angelic pressure, kill their arc, let our board go wide, and then the luster, it's going to bounce the spell back to our hand. So now we say, hey, we already killed your first arc, and I will threaten to kill them time and time again until you find a way to deal with my glorious chicken. And there's there's game states where your opponent just crumbles. Like, they just lose on the spot after that first one. So I only have 2 angelic pressure in here. It probably should be 3 for just how absurdly good it is early game with Caladrius. But again, this is like one of the more recent changes that I've done where I've added in angelic pressure, and the card has just been gas. And then Drowsy Fumes, like, look, even if you're playing the go wide version of yellow, listen, I'm sorry, you are just straight up wrong if you're not playing Drowsy Fumes. Early game, and even sometimes in the mid game, this card absolutely slaps and does so much value trading for you that, again, if you're playing Penton and can just play this for free and you have a luster maybe on the back of it, or if you just need, like, a 2,000 BP swing is significant. If you haven't played enough to know that like a 2K is a very significant battle trick where it's not in like a lot of other card games, Drowsy Fumes slaps. And then on top of that, you're just drawing it for free from your cards, right? Like, it goes into your strategy. This card is literally free for you. Please always play 4 of this card. I cannot stress this enough. No matter what version of the God Behemoth deck you're running, if you don't start with 4 Drowsy Fumes, it's wrong. That's just how it is. It is one of the strongest and best cards in the deck simply because it does everything that you want it to do. Again, can't stress it enough. Drowsy Fumes and Caladrius especially, cards are gas. Play them in more lists. And then Angelic Pressure is just because we have Arc. Kind of breaking away from our 2 costs, or specifically 2 cost synergy in terms of the printed costs. These are now like the other value enablers. So Cat Sith, again, this is just going to be a draw 1 most of the time, so it replaces itself. Other times it's going to be a draw 2, which obviously just feels great. Then you're turning through your deck faster. But again, the important part here is that it being able to go to even 4K or 3K for 2 and 4K for 3 is very, very good. All around solid card. You're still playing for this in both versions of the deck because it just does so much for you. Hits good power numbers for your early game and just draws you free cards. And then the other one that I keep going back and forth on if it's a 3 or a 4 of, but it definitely belongs in the list, is Airavita. This card is able to get back so many good spirits for you that, sometimes you just want a Freezatol coming back. Sometimes you just want a Prince Penton back because you have a heavy magic hand. Maybe sometimes you're bringing back a Caladrius because you want a Royal Potion and OTK your opponent that way. Like, the number of options that this card gives you is insane. The problem is you draw it early and it is deader than dead. Like, it is the worst, well, maybe not the worst, but it is one of the worst early draws that you can hit that, like, I don't want to see this card until turn 3 or turn 4, and I'd rather see literally every other 2-drop. So maybe in that case, it's supposed to be a 2 of because it's something that you don't want to see more than like once or twice. But that said, like, it's so good. I feel terrible for cutting back on any more than the 3 that I have in like in these initial lists. That might change, but again, it is deader than dead if you draw it early, and it feels so bad to have 2 of these in your hand even at a time. But at some board states, you're able to just attack with it. It's a 2K power, so it dies on block. You're able to summon back another spirit and then attack again. So it really is. It lets you get back your key pieces. It lets you get a double attack in on offense, and it lets you get a double block on defense. Like, it does everything. The only stipulation is that it is absolutely the deadest of draws if you don't have a good graveyard to support it, which, can be quite difficult sometimes for this list in the early game, unless you just like mill stuff off of one of your spirits early, and then you kill off like the Prince Penton because you want to loop it back off Airavita, right? Because then you hopefully Prince Penton draws another card. So there's weird like scenarios like that, but otherwise it's kind of whatever, and you're just happy to see it. And then lastly, for our tech options, and yes, I'm calling Royal Potion a tech option. So this is a card that, yes, again, if you're playing the all-in go-wide strategy, it's probably like a 3 of. That's like your main win con, like, haha, gotcha, right? But I don't like that version of the list because it is very all-in, and you're not winning the sideboard games. Like, this isn't Japan Battle Spirits where you can just go, haha, gotcha, game 1. Sorry, you got to play a game 2 and game 3, and you are deader than dead to a lot of sideboard cards in that build. So again, if you want to play that all-in rush, be my guest, but I think that it is going to be deader than dead because of sideboards. But Royal Potion does make a very spicy one of, right? We have so many different ways to get back Caladrius that now, in the mid to late game, we've just gained so many cores because of our Blessed Cathedral that playing Royal Potion multiple times is not unreasonable at all. And it can just kill your opponent. So I have it as a one of, maybe as a two of, just because you want to be more spicy with it. But it is a max two of in this list. For another 2-drop, we're playing Flamefish. Again, because it's a 2 cost, it works with most of our deck synergies. It does not work with things like Blessed Cathedral because it cares about a Yellow Spirit. But also, again, this one being able to hit 3k power, even if it's for 3, is very good. But our deck doesn't care about the Soul Core a lot of times, and this being able to threaten blowing something up for 4k, it's getting through damage. Now, I will admit, there are multiple turns or multiple games I've had where you get 2 of these in your hand, and it's very awkward. But, you can slowly play these out and chip away at 4,000 power stuff. And then again, from a way later, big brain style of stuff, this also works quite well with your Godbeast on the board because they want to make something level 1, right? So it can block your other guys, but now you can leave this guy as a 1k and threaten to blow up. Either they take the damage or you blow up what they were trying to leave back as a blocker because it's only a level 1 to get around Godbeast, right? So there's a lot of cool mini mind games that you can play by showing a Flamefish early that I think are really underrated. But Flamefish has been absolutely gas in this list for us, and I think it's a 4 of just always. And then the last one, Ryut. It probably should be the 4 cost exhaust you with Luster, and yeah, I realize it's probably better, but I'm expecting we're going to see a lot of Nova, and shocker, I'd rather have at least 2 Ryut main because it is a difficult matchup. I have one, don't get me wrong, you can beat Nova with this list, but I'd rather just have a couple Ryut main deck just because I know that's going to be such a popular deck to play against. And maybe you're saying okay, well, I think there's going to be a lot of the white deck around that's going to be big robots and beefy blockers. Okay, then just slide this card out for the 4 angel, the Luster Angel that has tap something down, right? That's fine too. Same cost. They fill similar roles that it's saying hey, these are my this deck card that you want to splash some number of them in the main deck. But Ryut just has beautiful artwork. And I think also I guess not to be missed, right? But, can't be bounced during your turn. That's also going to be relevant in some scenarios. So I think Ryut is just a good, okay card to have. It's in your deck and makes things awful for your opponent. It's probably just fine, right? You can find 2 main deck slots for this guy, or again, the Tap Angel if you're expecting the meta to be a little bit differently, and then just bring in more of these game 2 and game 3 if you need to. That said, it is pretty easy for red players to kill this card, but if it buys you even just 1 turn, or maybe it buys you multiple turns, right? That's kind of all you need is yellow. Now, obviously, you're going to have things like Counter Sword or whatever it's called in your sideboard as well to try to have more anti-Nova hate. But I think Ryut, again, being a yellow spirit and being able to give you protection against 2 different style of decks and can help protect Godbeast, right? Where he's not losing in combat, he's only losing by being bounced. I think that's fine as well. So it might not be the most obvious pick for a 2 of in the main deck, but I think it's been fine overall. So with that is our Godbeast Behemoth deck list. And again, very likely I'm playing this in Vegas. I just love this list. There's some numbers that I probably have to change around or figure out, and I'm going to be working on it. I will be doing a gameplay video, hopefully here in the near future for it, but I think with just all the different lines that this list can pull off and all the cards you have access to, even the magics I didn't cover right in this video, just some of the sideboard options that you have access to, makes this a very real threat. And again, you have to be thinking about your sideboards for Vegas, and for right now, it is very early on in testing and whatnot, so maybe a month from now, we'll have a better idea. But I'm very curious to see where this ends up because at least in my initial version of this list, it is very good and it has a lot of decent plays that you can do into a lot of different decks. And for me, that's a key thing, right? I don't want to build always a one-trick deck that can only do one thing well, and this is the type of strategy it's going to, excel at, and it automatically dies to X, Y, or Z. This one does have quite a bit of range to it and gives you the options to really outplay your opponent. And again, Royal Potion can do that a lot. Angelic Pressure or Exhaust Nexus can get you the different value hits that you need across multiple decks. There's a lot that you have here for options. And then Alice is just insanely good. I don't know. Can't say much more than that. And if you play it, you'll know. Alice is the sauce for this list and for yellow in general because of how much it can do. But with that, you've asked for it. Here it is. This is our yellow deck profile for Godbeast Behemoth. We're going to do a luster deck once I have time to play test it and get it out there, because I don't like where my luster deck is at right now. So it needs time to work out, and we'll see where it ends up. So with that, my friends, have a great rest of your weekend or week. Make sure to stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next Battle Spirit Saga video. Cheers.